On the planet Xerix, there was an unspoken rule that every visitor learned the moment they arrived. Never try to uncover Princess Zera's face. The people of Xerix, an advanced alien race known as the Arcali, were beautiful, their features like carved statues of otherworldly perfection. But Zara, their princess, was something else entirely. Her beauty had a power that went beyond the physical. She was not just an object of admiration, she was the heart of her people. Yet there was a mystery about her that no one dared to solve. Zara's face was always covered by a veil, a shimmery, translucent piece of cloth that sparkled like stardust in the soft light of the palace. No one had seen her face in years. In fact, no one was allowed to. It was a tradition, steeped in secrecy and ancient customs that had lasted for centuries. According to the elders of the Arcali, anyone who tried to see her face before the appointed moment would be cursed, driven to madness, or enslaved to an ancient force. It was a rule that had protected Zara for as long as she could remember, and over the years, it had become more than a rule. It was a legend, one that few dared to challenge. But Captain Ark Vance was different. He wasn't afraid of old stories. The human mercenary had seen his share of strange and dangerous worlds. His job was simple: deliver a message to Princess Zara and get paid. But Eric didn't just care about his paycheck. He was intrigued by Zara. There was something about the mystery surrounding her that pulled at him. Something more than just the legend of her face. He had met alien royalty before, and he had learned quickly that the real power often lay hidden behind walls of mystery and tradition. Zara, the princess of Xerix, had built a wall around herself, a wall he was determined to climb. As he entered the palace, Arik couldn't help but marvel at its beauty. The walls were made of polished stone that shimmered in the dim light, covered in intricate carvings that told the history of the Arcali people. He had been to many alien worlds, but nothing had prepared him for this place. It was ancient, yet it had the feel of something alive, breathing with secrets of the past. The guards outside the grand hall didn't speak a word as Arik approached. They watched him silently, their eyes hidden behind dark, sleek helmets. They had heard the rumors about the human mercenary, bold, reckless, and not easily intimidated. Arik was used to that reputation. He walked forward with confidence, his boots echoing on the stone floor. Inside, Princess Zara awaited. She sat on a throne made of crystal, her back straight, her posture regal. Her veil shimmered as it caught the light, but her face remained hidden. There was a quiet elegance about her, a sense of power that radiated from her without her needing to say a word. Even from this distance, Arik could feel her presence, a force that seemed to fill the entire room. As he stepped closer, the silence stretched between them. He could feel the weight of the custom hanging in the air, the centuries-old tradition that had kept her isolated from the world. He could feel it, but he wasn't scared of it. He wasn't here to follow the rules. He was here for something more, something that had nothing to do with tradition or ancient stories. He was here to understand the woman behind the veil. When he stopped before her, he spoke first, his voice steady. "Princess Zara," he said, bowing slightly, "I bring a message from the Galactic Council. They wish to discuss matters of peace with your people." Zara didn't move. Her hands rested on the arms of the throne, fingers lightly curled, but her gaze never left him. Even though he couldn't see her face, Arik felt as though she were studying him, measuring him with the quiet intensity of someone used to being the center of attention. "Speak your message, human," she replied, her voice soft yet commanding. The way she spoke carried the weight of authority, though her tone was never harsh. It was almost as if she were waiting for him to prove himself worthy of her attention. Arik wasn't intimidated. He had spoken to leaders across the galaxy, many of them far more powerful and influential than Zara. But there was something about her that made him pause. It wasn't just her beauty, it was something deeper, something he couldn't quite place yet. He handed her the official seal from the Galactic Council, which she took without a word. Zara looked at the seal briefly, then back at him. "The Council wishes for us to consider an alliance," Arik continued, now sensing that her silence wasn't a dismissal. It was a challenge. "The war with the Draker is escalating, and they believe the Arcali could turn the tide. They need your support." Zara's expression remained unreadable, but the tension in the room was palpable. The Drakkar, a fierce and brutal alien race, had been raiding peaceful systems for years. Their ships were fast, their weapons devastating, and their hunger for power unquenchable. Every planet in their path had either fallen or been left in ruins. If the Arcali could lend their strength, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift. But Zara was no fool. She knew the Council wasn't offering an alliance out of kindness. They were desperate. And the Arcali had been in isolation for too long. They were a proud race, and their power was immense. The question was, would they risk everything to help strangers in a war that had nothing to do with them? She stood up slowly, the crystal throne shifting slightly as she rose. Her presence grew even stronger. Orcs could feel the weight of her decision hanging in the air. But he wasn't there just to speak about politics. He'd come for something more, though he wasn't sure how to approach it yet. He'd spent years on different worlds, meeting all kinds of beings. But none had intrigued him quite like her. "Why do you not show your face, princess?" Eric asked before he could stop himself. There was a long pause. Zara's eyes flickered for just a moment, and the tension in the air seemed to double. It was a question many had asked, but few dared to. For all the fear and legends surrounding her, no one had ever had the courage to ask it directly. But Arik wasn't afraid. He had never been afraid of what others feared. He had lived his life on the edge, and he wasn't about to stop now. Zara didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied him for a moment, her gaze softening just the slightest bit. "Do you fear the curse, human?" she asked, her voice a whisper now. Arik shook his head, meeting her gaze evenly. "No, I don't believe in curses, princess. I believe in people." Zara's eyes narrowed slightly, as if she were weighing his words. For a long time, she said nothing, just standing there in front of him, the veil still hanging between them. There was something in her expression, something almost like regret or longing. "You were the first to say such words to me." Her voice was low, but Arik heard the hint of something vulnerable beneath her regal tone. Arik nodded, sensing the shift in the conversation. This wasn't just about politics or war anymore. It was about something deeper. "I'm not here to judge you, princess. I'm here to understand." Zara looked down at the seal in her hands. And for a moment, Arik thought she might say more. But then she simply nodded. "Very well, human," she said. "You have spoken your part. Council will be given its answer in time." Arik bowed again, but this time he felt something different in the air. The challenge between them wasn't over, it had only just begun. As he left the room, he couldn't help but wonder what lay behind the veil. It wasn't just a barrier of cloth. It was a barrier between two worlds, the world of the Arcali and the world of the humans. And somehow, he knew that his future was tied to that barrier, to Zara, and to whatever secrets lay hidden in her eyes. The days following Eric Vance's arrival on Xerix were filled with tension. The message had been delivered, and the princess had heard the council's plea for aid. But despite her calm exterior, Eric could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. Every time he encountered Zara in the Grand Hall, he saw the same guarded expression. The princess was more than just royalty. She was a symbol of her people's strength and their deep, ancient traditions. And yet, couldn't shake the feeling that she was as trapped by her power as the veil was trapping her face. Arik had no idea how long it would take for the princess to make her decision. But one thing was clear. He couldn't leave without understanding the mystery of Zara. There was something about her, something in the way she carried herself, in the way she spoke, and in the silence that always surrounded her that made him curious. She was powerful, no doubt, but she was also lonely. Eric could see it in her eyes, in the way she never smiled, in the way her gaze often drifted toward the windows, as if longing for something more than the walls of the palace. On the 4th day of his stay, he received an unexpected invitation. A private audience with the princess. The message came via a holographic display, the words flickering in the air before him. "You are invited to dine with Princess Zara tonight. Come alone." Arik raised an eyebrow. This wasn't something he had expected. The princess, for all her mystery and distance, had never given him any personal invitation. Was this a chance to finally understand her? Or was it a test? Either way, Eric wasn't one to turn down an opportunity. He had dealt with far more dangerous situations in his career, but something told him this was different. This was something personal. That evening, he donned his casual attire, a simple but fitted black jacket with the insignia of his mercenary group, the Starborn. No armor, no weapons. Tonight, he would be a man, not a soldier. The palace was quieter than usual as he walked through its marble halls. The only sound, the soft echo of his footsteps. The walls were adorned with intricate carvings of the Archalius past battles won, treaties signed, kings crowned. It was clear that history was a big part of their culture, but Eric couldn't help but wonder how much of it was history and how much was myth. When he reached the dining hall, he was met by two attendants, who guided him inside without a word. The room was large, with a long table set in the center. But unlike the grand golden designs of the palace, this room was simple, almost humble in comparison. The walls were covered in rich tapestries depicting scenes of nature and ancient legends. The air was thick with the smell of fresh food, though there were only two places set at the table at the far end. Princess Zara sat, her veil shimmering softly in the dim light. Her back was straight, and though she appeared calm, Eric could sense the subtle tension in the air. It wasn't just the weight of her title, but something deeper. She was still hiding something, and Eric knew he would have to be patient to uncover it. "Captain Vance," Zara said softly, her voice steady, but distant. "I hope you found your stay on Xerix comfortable." Arik gave a small smile as he sat down across from her. "I've been treated well, Princess. Thank you for the invitation." He watched her for a moment, noticing how her eyes seemed to flicker just for an instant before turning her attention to the meal before her. "Please, help yourself," Zara said, gesturing to the spread of food before them. The dishes were unfamiliar to him. Roasted meats, fruits that glowed in the dim light, and a variety of strange vegetables. He reached for a plate of fruits and placed a few on his side of the table, keeping his eyes on her. There was something in the way she held herself that intrigued him. It wasn't just her beauty. It was the air of authority that clung to her. Even in this quiet, intimate setting, for a moment they ate in silence. The food was surprisingly delicious, the flavors bold and fresh. But Arik couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a dinner, it was a test. A way for Zara to see if he could handle more than the politics of the council's message. Finally, after several minutes of silence, Zara spoke. "Tell me, Arik Vance, why do you continue to ask questions no one else dares to?" Arik set his fork down, surprised by her directness. "What do you mean?" "About the veil," she said, her voice softer now. "About the curse. You are not like the others. They fear me, but you do not." There was a hint of curiosity in her voice now, a crack in her usual composure. Arik leaned forward slightly, his eyes meeting hers. "I've seen too many legends in my time to believe in curses, Princess. And frankly, I don't think you're the type of person to hide behind old superstitions. You're more than that. You don't need a veil to hide your strength." Zara's eyes flickered again, this time with something close to surprise. It wasn't often that someone spoke to her like that. Most people, whether out of fear or respect, kept their distance, but not Arik. He was different. And that made her feel something she hadn't in a long time, curiosity. She tilted her head slightly. "You're right," she said after a long pause. "But there are things in my past that cannot be forgotten." The veil was not always a symbol of mystery. It was a protection away to keep those who sought to control me at bay. Eric's curiosity deepened. What happened? Why would they want to control you? Zara's gaze shifted, her eyes darkening for a moment. She didn't answer immediately. The silence between them stretched, thick and heavy. Eric could see that this wasn't an easy topic for her, but he was determined to understand, to learn the truth behind the veil. "Perhaps another time," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "I am not ready to share that part of myself with anyone, not yet." Arik nodded, sensing that he had crossed a line. He knew better than to push too hard, I understand. "But if you ever want to, talk." He paused. "I'm here." Zara looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she gave a slight nod, acknowledging his words. "Thank you, Captain." The rest of the dinner passed in relative quiet, but something had shifted between them. It wasn't just the political tension between their worlds, it was something more personal. Eric had seen it in her eyes. He had reached something inside her, something she wasn't used to sharing. And though she still wore the veil, Eric could sense that she was slowly beginning to trust him in ways she hadn't trusted. Anyone in years after dinner, Zara stood, signaling that the audience had come to an end. "I must retire for the evening. You are free to rest, Captain Vance. Tomorrow we will discuss the council's request further." Arik stood, bowing slightly. "Thank you, Princess. I look forward to it." As he turned to leave, he couldn't help but glance back at her. Zara stood still, her back straight, her veil shimmering like a barrier between them. Tonight, it felt a little less impenetrable. Arik knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were secrets buried beneath the surface of this world, and Zara's past was one of them. But he had made his first step forward. The questions he had were far from over, and now he had the feeling that the answers might come from the one person who had the courage to defy the veil. The days after Eric's dinner with Princess Zara were quiet, but something in the air had changed. The walls of the palace, once cold and distant, now seemed a little warmer. Arik could feel it as he moved through the grand halls and unspoken understanding between him and Zara, a crack in the walls of mystery that had surrounded her for so long. Though Zara still wore her veil, there was a change in her behavior. She was not as distant, not as cold as she had been before. Their conversations had begun to stray from politics and the war with the Drakkar. She had started to ask him questions, too, about his past, his experiences as a soldier, what had brought him to this point in his life. Arik was careful with his answers, always vague when it came to his past. There were things even he didn't want to remember, but every day they grew closer, and each time he saw her, he felt more drawn to her. It wasn't just her beauty, though, that was undeniable. It was the way she carried herself, the quiet strength that radiated from her, even when she was silent. There was something about the princess that tugged at him, something more than just the mystery of her face. One afternoon, Arik was summoned to the palace's central courtyard. It was a place he hadn't seen much of since his arrival. The large open space was surrounded by towering walls covered in ivy, and the ground was dotted with small, colorful flowers that seemed to glow in the sunlight. In the center of the courtyard was a fountain, its water sparkling as it flowed into a pool. It was a peaceful place, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere that often hung over the palace. Arik had been told that the princess wanted to speak with him again. He arrived early, eager to see what new development had come from their earlier conversations. He was surprised to see that Zara was already there, standing by the fountain, her back to him. Veil shimmered in the light, but he could see that she wasn't simply gazing at the water. Her posture was tense, her shoulders rigid, as though she was preparing for something. "Princess," Eric called softly as he approached. Zara turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. There was something different in her gaze. Now, something raw. Something vulnerable that hadn't been there before. "Captain Vance." She greeted him, her voice still calm but with a slight edge to it. "Thank you for meeting me." Arik could see that there is something on her mind. "Of course, Princess. What's troubling you?" Zara hesitated for a moment, her fingers brushing against the veil as if she were uncertain about what to do next. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversations," she said, her voice quieter now. "About the curse, about my past. And I've decided that I cannot hide behind the veil any longer." Eric felt a jolt of surprise run through him. For weeks, she had kept her face hidden, unwilling to speak about what lay behind the fabric. And now she was saying she would finally reveal it. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what that meant. He had only seen glimpses of Zara's face, her eyes, her lips, but nothing more. There had been rumors about her appearance, whispers, that her face was cursed, that no one could look upon it without being consumed by madness. Arik had always dismissed those stories as superstition, but now, as he stood in front of her, he wondered if they had some truth. "You don't have to do this, Zara," he said carefully. "If you're not ready, there's no shame in waiting." She shook her head slowly. a faint smile touching her lips. I've hidden from this moment for too long. It's time for me to face it. It's time for me to face myself. Zara reached up to her veil, her fingers trembling ever so slightly as she grasped the fabric. For a moment, Eric thought she might change her mind, but then she pulled the veil away, letting it fall to the ground. What he saw took his breath away. Her face was unlike anything he had expected. There were no disfigurations, no scars, no curses. Instead, what he saw was a face of startling beauty, flawless skin, sharp features, and eyes that seemed to shimmer with a quiet depth. She was more beautiful than any person, human or alien, he had ever seen. But it wasn't just her physical beauty that struck him. It was the sadness in her eyes, the weight of years of hiding. There was something deep within her gaze, something dark that he could sense. Something she had kept locked away for far too long. Arik took a step forward, his voice low. Zara. But she held up her hand, silencing him. You don't understand. It's not about how I look, Eric. It's about what my people believe, what the council believes. The veil is a symbol of power, yes, but it's also a symbol of fear, a fear that they've used to control me. Arik's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Zara sighed, her shoulders sagging as though the weight of the years had suddenly become too much to bear. She sat down on the edge of the fountain, her eyes cast downward. When I was younger, I was told that my face held great power, that it could either bring my people to greatness or destroy them.
Oh.
There were those who wanted to use me for their own purposes. They kept me hidden. My veil became a symbol of control, a way to protect me from those who wanted to manipulate me. Arik listened intently, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fall into place. So, you've been kept hidden all this time because of a fear your people had of your own power? Zara nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, they told me I was too dangerous to be seen. But the truth is, I was never dangerous. I only wanted to help my people, but the fear of what they believed about. Meat became real. It became the reason for my isolation. Arik stepped closer, crouching down in front of her. Zara, you're not what they think. You've never been dangerous. You've been hiding from yourself, from who you really are. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, Arik saw the flicker of hope, their hope that had been buried for so long. But it was quickly replaced by doubt, deep-rooted fear of what might happen next. I don't know if I can change things, Arik, she said softly. I don't know if my people will ever accept me for who I truly am. Arik reached out, gently taking her hand in his. You don't have to do it alone, Zara. I'll help you. I won't let them control you anymore. Her breath caught in her throat, and for the first time in what seemed like forever, Zara allowed herself to truly believe in someone. She looked up at Arik, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt, but there was none. You would stand by me? She asked, her voice full of quiet wonder. Arik nodded, his grip on her hand firm. I already am. They simply sat there together in the courtyard, the quiet sound of the fountain filling the space around them. It felt like the weight of centuries had been lifted, the veil not just of cloth but of fear and doubt finally torn away. Zara smiled. A small but genuine smile, and for the first time, it wasn't a smile hidden behind a veil. It was a smile. That came from her heart. I don't know what the future holds, Arik, but I'm ready to face it. Ready to face myself. Arik squeezed her hand gently, his heart swelling with an emotion he hadn't expected hope. The journey ahead would be difficult, and the road would not be easy. But for the first time, Zara no longer felt like she was walking it alone. The days following Zara's reveal were quiet but tense. The princess had, for the first time in many years, allowed someone to see her face, not just Arik, but the world. She had removed her veil not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of healing. And while the walls of the palace still felt heavy with history and tradition, there was now a subtle shift in the way people looked at her. Her people. Her subjects, but the shift didn't go unnoticed by everyone. Arik could feel the undercurrent of tension that ran through the palace like an invisible thread. A growing storm that no one seemed willing to talk about. It wasn't just the council, who had long watched over the princess. There were others in the shadows, those who had helped build the very walls she had been trapped behind. Some of them still didn't want her to lead. Some of them didn't want her to be free. They were starting to make their voices heard. On the 7th day after her decision to stand unmasked, a meeting was called a special gathering of the council, the advisors, and the highest-ranking military officials of the Arcali Empire. Arik had been asked to attend, and though he didn't know what to expect, he knew that the tension in the air was about to snap. The room was large, lined with dark stone walls that seemed to absorb the noise. A long table stretched across the center of the room, with the members of the council seated around it. At the head of the table sat Zara, her posture still regal, though her gaze was more guarded than Arik had ever seen it before. There was a palpable shift in the air as the doors to the chamber opened, and the murmurs of the council grew quieter. Arik stood at the far end of the room, watching the interaction closely. His role here was unclear. He had been invited because of his position as a neutral force in the ongoing conflict with the Drakkar, but he suspected that his presence had other motives as well. Zara was not yet accepted by all of her people, and there were those in the room who saw her as a threat to the stability they had spent years building. "You summoned us, Your Highness." An older man spoke, his voice thick with authority. His eyes never left Zara, though there was a slight sneer on his lips. "We have been patient with you. But this display," he gestured toward her face, "is growing beyond our tolerance." Zara didn't flinch, though the words stung. She kept her expression neutral, her eyes cold and calculating. "I've been patient too, Counselor," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "It's time for the Arcali to move forward. And that begins with me." The counselor scoffed, leaning forward, his hands pressing against the table. "Move forward? You are a symbol of fear, Zara. You always have been." The veil was a shield, yes, but it was also a reminder that there are things in this universe that should not be revealed. Your power, your face, should not be seen by all. It is dangerous. Arik could feel the tension rising in the room, and he could see that Zara was struggling to maintain her composure. She had not anticipated this kind of resistance, not from her own people. She had hoped, naively perhaps, that the council would support her. But they were the ones who had trapped her in the first place. They were the ones who had used her as a pawn for years. And now they feared what she might become if she stood free of their control. "I don't need a veil to lead," Zara said, her voice low but steady. "What you fear is not my face. What you fear is my ability to lead, and I will not hide from that anymore." The room was silent for a long moment. Arik could see the shifting looks among the counselors, some of them uncomfortable with her defiance. It was clear that the princess had more support from the younger generation. But the older counselors held a great deal of power. They weren't ready to let go of the old ways before anyone else could speak. Another figure entered the room, an older man, dressed in the same dark robes as the council members, but with a distinct air of authority. He was tall, with graying hair and sharp, calculating eyes that fixed immediately on Zara. His presence seemed to command the room, and the atmosphere shifted once again. "Enough," the man said, his voice rich with authority. "We are here to decide the fate of the Empire, not to bicker over outdated traditions." Zara's eyes narrowed as she met his gaze. "Grand Marshal Torin," she said, her tone colder than before.
"What do you want?"
Torin's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I want what's best for the Arcali. I believe you are wasting time, Princess. The Drakkar are growing stronger by the day. If we do not focus on them, if we do not put our differences aside, then none of this will matter." Arik couldn't help but notice the tension between Zara and Torin. There was history. There's something between them that was unspoken, undeniable. Zara had always felt like a prisoner in her own palace, and Torin was the one who had helped keep her in that prison. He was a master of strategy, a seasoned military leader, but he was also a man who had used fear to control Zara's destiny. "I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Drakkar are not a threat," Zara replied, her voice sharp. "God, I will not be controlled anymore, Grand Marshal. My people will no longer be led by fear. I will lead them with strength, with clarity, and I will not let anyone stand in my way." Torin's smile faded, and his eyes turned cold. You speak of clarity, but you are blinded by your own arrogance, princess. If you continue down this path, you will divide us, will cause more harm than good. Zara's expression remained unwavering. Then it's a good thing that I have someone who will stand with me, she said, turning her gaze toward Auric. Her eyes were steady, confident, and for the first time in this room, she looked like the true ruler of the Arcali. Auric stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm. The tension was thick in the air, and he could feel the weight of every eye in the room on him. The princess is right. He can fight her for control, but it won't change the fact that she is the future of the Arcali.
Ow.
If you want to face the Drakkar, you'll need to face the truth of who she is.
Huh?
She is the one who will unite the people, not you. The room fell silent. Aric's words were bold, and as they hung in the air, he could see the surprise on the faces of the council members. Torin, however, remained unmoved. His eyes were hard, cold. This is not over, princess, Torin said quietly, his voice like a stone being dropped into water. I will not bow to you. Not yet. Zara's gaze never wavered. Then you will have to choose, Marshal. A future where the people are united under a leader they trust, or a future divided by fear and control. Choose wisely. With that, she turned and exited the room, her back straight, her face a mask of determination. Eric followed her, feeling the weight of the moment settle around them both. Outside the chamber, in the quiet hallways, Zara took a deep breath, letting the tension of the meeting slip away. But Auric could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weariness that had settled deep within her. You did well, Auric said, his voice gentle. Zara didn't respond immediately. She simply walked forward, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Finally, after a long pause, she spoke. I don't know if I can win this, Auric. There are so many who want to see me fail. So many who fear what I could become. Auric stepped beside her, offering his silent support. You don't have to do it alone. I'm with you. Whatever happens, I won't leave you. She looked at him then, her eyes softening for a moment. Before hardening again, I'm not afraid of them, but I fear what I might lose. Auric squeezed her hand. You won't lose me, I promise. And in that moment, for the first time, Zara allowed herself to believe it. The next few days felt like a whirlwind of strategy meetings, tense negotiations, and quiet moments of reflection. The threat of the Drakkar was becoming more real by the hour, and Zara's role as the leader of her people was becoming clearer. She knew that the time to act was drawing near. But the harder part, convincing her people and the council to support her, was not something that could be solved in a single meeting. As Zara paced in her private chambers, Auric watched her closely. There was something different in her now. Something stronger, more determined. It was as if the woman who had been hidden behind a veil for so long had finally stepped into the light. But despite the strength she exuded, Auric could see the fear in her eyes. The fear of the unknown. The fear of losing everything she had worked for. Zara, he said softly, stepping forward. You can't fight this alone. You know that, right? Zara turned to face him, her expression thoughtful but distant. I know, but sometimes it feels like I am alone, Eric. The council, they want to see me fail, and the people, they are so divided. I can feel the weight of their doubt every time I stand before them. Auric took a step closer, his voice firm. You're not alone. The people are divided because they've been kept in the dark for so long. But once they see what you can do, once they see who you truly are, they'll follow you. You've already begun to change things, Zara. Zara paused, her fingers brushing the edge of her desk. I hope you're right. But the Drakkar are pushing closer every day. If I can't unite my people, we might not have a future to fight for. Auric stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. You'll have that future. You just need to trust in yourself. Trust that you're not the same person you were when you first came to the throne. Zara nodded, but the worry still lingered. In her eyes, I have to be more than just a leader, Auric. I have to be a symbol. I have to inspire my people to fight with everything they have. But there are still too many who want to see me fall. Auric met her gaze, his eyes full of understanding. Then we'll fight for you. together. The following morning, Zara stood before the council again. This time, there was no veil, no symbol of protection. It was just her, standing at the front of the room, ready to face the storm that was about to come. The council chamber was filled with an air of tension that seemed to press down on everyone. The members were seated, their faces serious, their eyes narrowing as Zara entered the room. Grand Marshal Torin was already seated at the head of the table, his cold gaze fixed on her as she approached. "Your Highness," he began, his voice smooth, but firm, "I hope you understand the gravity of the situation. The Drakkar do not wait for us to be ready. They will strike soon, and we must be prepared." Zara nodded, stepping forward to address the council. "I understand the urgency, Marshal Torin, but we are not ready, not just in terms of military strength, but in terms of unity. We need to rally our people, to inspire them to fight for something greater than just survival." A murmur ran through the council, and Zara could see the skepticism in their eyes. But she didn't back down. Instead, she stepped forward, her posture strong. "I am no longer the princess you've tried to control," she said, her voice ringing. "Through the room, I am the leader of the Arkali. I will do whatever it takes to ensure that we stand united against the Drakkar." Torin's eyes narrowed. "You've always been a threat to this empire, Zara. Your ideals are... dangerous. You may have won the loyalty of the people for now, but they won't follow a leader who places her own ideals above the safety of the empire." Zara's eyes flashed. "You're wrong, Marshal. People don't need fear to follow. They need hope. They need to know that they are not just subjects under a crown. They need to know that they are part of something greater. They need to believe in their future." Eric, standing just behind Zara, could feel the rising tension in the room. The council was divided. Some were nodding, clearly swayed by her words, while others looked like they were ready to argue. But it wasn't just the council that Zara needed to win over. It was her people, and that wasn't something she could do alone. "I will lead this fight," Zara continued, her voice steady, "but I will not lead in fear. We must unite under the banner of hope, not tyranny." A few council members shifted in their seats, exchanging looks. There was a moment of silence before Torin spoke again, his voice cold and calculating. "And what do you expect us to do, Princess? We've already committed resources to the defense of the kingdom. We cannot afford to focus on uniting the people when the enemy is at our doorstep." Zara's gaze hardened. "I do not ask you to stop fighting, Marshal, but I ask you to stand with me, to show the people that we are not divided, to show them that we have a future worth fighting for." For a long moment, no one spoke. The tension was almost unbearable. Then, one of the younger council members, a woman who had supported Zara from the beginning, stood and spoke.
"Agree
with the princess," she said, her voice firm. "We cannot simply fight to survive. We must fight for something more. If we cannot inspire the people, we will lose before the Drakkar even reach us." Her words struck a chord with the others in the room. Slowly, one by one, more council members began to nod, their expressions changing as they realized the truth in Zara's words. The tension in the room shifted, and Zara could see that she had begun to win them over. Turan remained silent, his face unreadable. But the damage had been done. Zara had gained a foothold in the council. That evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the sky above, Zara and Orcs stood together on the balcony of her chambers. The city stretched out before them, the lights of the city flickering like tiny stars in the distance. For a moment, there was only silence between them, quiet, peaceful. Zara looked out at the horizon, her thoughts heavy. "I don't know if I can do this, Arik. I feel like I'm asking so much of them, asking them to believe in something they've never seen before." Arik stepped closer, standing beside her. "They'll believe in you, Zara. They already do. Council might resist, but they'll come around. You've shown them who you are, and now they see the strength in you." Zara turned to him, her eyes softening. "I don't know what I would do without you." Arik met her gaze, his voice steady. "You won't have to. I'm with you, Zara. I'll fight by your side, whatever comes." For the first time in what felt like ages, Zara allowed herself to relax, to let go of the fear that had been holding her back. She had Eric by her side, and that gave her the strength to face whatever came next. She looked out toward the stars again, a new determination in her heart. "We're ready," she said, her voice quiet but full of conviction. "Tomorrow we begin the fight for our future." And as the two of them stood together, the quiet hum of the city surrounding them, they knew that the dawn of a new day was rising. A day where they would stand united against the Drakkar, against their fears, and against the forces that sought to tear them apart. Together, they would forge a new future.